Hello and welcome to another action-packed episode of Geeky Voices Carry, the podcast that is part of the problem. Tonight we are extra-ly problematic-ish because panelist Stacy Delafano is unfortunately unavailable. I won't say she's dead because David won't let me. So we'll just say she's temporarily unavailable and waiting for the next resurrection spell. With me tonight,
she doesn't want to go on the cart. That's the official statement.
With me tonight is David Rollins.
Hello.
And Josh Thompson.
Hey.
And tonight we are talking about a made-up word that is the best thing for gaming since they moved away from using 2d6 for charisma.
Oh yeah.
So tonight, David, since you coined the word, I will let you introduce the topic.
Oh, fantastic! All right. Well, the phrase I think you're talking about is polygamory. The idea of playing multiple systems, multiple games in order to get your game on, versus monogaming, which is just using the same system for everything.
There is no game but game.
Yes. It's like
And
should use System X for everything.
the more important part of that is suggesting to use that game for everything to everyone. That's the real clincher.
Are you looking for gritty World War II action? Game X.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Are you looking for freewheeling anime gaming? Game X.
Whereas Game X is the
Paranormal romance?
exact same thing.
Yeah.
Game X. But we're using Fate for paranormal romance,
I know.
which was designed to be Game X.
It was, yeah.
Really, I think we're kind of we're almost like poster children for polygamory in our group because we've done we started out with Swords and Wizardry.
Mm-hmm.
We did some Savage Worlds run by the world's most terrible game master in the
Yeah.
world.
I am.
Yeah.
I need that on a shirt.
Yeah. That will also be coming out on our the t-shirt shop. Is Josh is a sucky GM.
At least I'm better than Josh.
Ouch. As long as they get me some royalties from that, sure.
So we played some Savage Worlds. We did a few games of Lamentations that you ran.
That's true. And I was better than Josh.
Oh,
Everyone.
come on. It's Lamentations. That.
We did Rifts for a couple of months.
Yeah.
We did
We're doing Fate, and we've done Fate in the past.
yeah.
We also play tested Machinations of the Space Princess.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at.
So does that count as Lamentations as well? I guess not really.
No.
No, it's a different game. It's all weird with weird mechanics that don't make sense.
I think we did some others too, didn't we?
There's some other stuff in there, and there was Rifts. I think once you've played Rifts,
Yeah.
you're a polygamerist.
Pretty much.
Now, just to make it sound like we're not
We also played some Fudge variants.
yeah.
Fantasy Trip.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yep. Both of those. Now, just to make it sound like we're not mocking those who only play one game, what would you say would be the advantages to just sticking to one game and playing it all the time?
Well, if you have a rules light game, it's not that hard to modify to fit to different things. And the main advantage of that is nobody's paying attention to the mechanics because everybody in the group already knows them. So you're paying attention to the setting and, I guess, invoking the setting or playing in the setting or the genre or whatever it is. So that could be an advantage there. The fact that everybody's already knows it inside out. That's why the D20 system or the D&D system has been modified to fit pretty much everything at one point or another, because a lot of people know that system, so it's an easier jump.
Well, and if it's a system where there is a lot of crunch to it, like say GURPS or Hero, it helps because you don't have to remaster a new system. Because if a lot of system mastery goes into learning the system, it sort of motivates you to not want to switch around game systems.
Or in the case of GURPS, usually having to buy several books, get all those different rules and everything.
Yeah, but GURPS is a good case because, like Fate, which we mentioned earlier, it's designed to be used in multiple genres, multiple settings. Like, that was the basic premise of GURPS. It was a universal role-playing system back when,
that was cool.
Back when it was cool to have all capital letters in your game title. But it creates a particular play style. That's the only problem, is you run into all of your games feel a little bit the same because they're constricted by the mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're playing Sword and Sorcery GURPS or GURPS Space,
the underlying
game experience,
is still the same.
Yeah, the game experience is going to be fairly similar.
That's the same with Fate, yeah. You're still rolling the 4 dice and checking that same chart, so.
Now, what are...
Fate's designed well because the aspects and things like that, and the world building is part of the character building. It might...
Yeah, still the same.
I can't say that the Fate experience is identical from genre to genre and setting to setting with any certainty. Because I haven't played more than one.
No, we played 2 because we also played the Tomorrow People.
Well, that was Fudge, though.
Yeah, that wasn't Fate.
Well, I mean, that's basically almost the same thing.
It was similar.
I'm sure there are people that would get upset by that.
I'm pretty sure people would get really upset by that assertion.
Clearly, I don't get those people.
Yeah. Anyways, so I don't know, and the system's designed for minor tweaks, giving a different feel, but it's also designed to give pulpy, really highly competent characters where everything's weighted towards success.
Which GURPS, on the other hand,
was weighted
to.
Well, excuse me. It's still, and I've bitched about this in a few podcasts, but it's still kind of set, as much as I played it and loved it over the years, it's still in that kind of late 80s, early to mid 90s mindset where there's always a chance of failure.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how awesome you're supposed to be at something, there's in GURPS you can always roll a critical miss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so,
we got around that by just juicing our stats and with the assumption that everything defaults to something.
Well, yeah, but the way the dice rolling worked, there was always supposed to be a chance.
No, there would be. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's just like D20 Modern and all that stuff too.
Yeah, and that's an approach that just kind of annoys the hell out of me. I mean, I think it's okay for the right kinds of settings or genres, but I don't think it's the right thing for all settings and genres. And I think there's a lot of genres that, like the more pulpy things. I mean, if you're running a Flash Gordon game, say, unless a failure is something that adds a cool element to the story, you don't really see Flash failing his piloting roles and smacking into a mountain.
No, but it's funny when Zarkov hits him in the head with a metal egg.
Yes, well, it's always funny when someone gets hit in the head with a metal egg, so...
To be fair, I wouldn't mind critical failure just as long as it was an extremely low chance. Like one of those things that just happens once every, like year or 2 or 3 or more.
Or it
Yeah.
was modified by ability. I mean, if you're a fairly low ability or skill type of character,
Yeah,
then I can
perhaps.
understand it. But as you get better, the odds of critical failure should go away.
Well, I don't
Right.
know. I mean, in the plane example, the problem might not be with him, but with the plane, but it would still be critical failure.
Yeah,
So,
that is very
Okay.
true.
So what
yeah,
about
yeah.
polygamery versus? Because we kind of got off topic there. We got lost.
We always get
We,
lost.
we do that.
Yeah. Because we were talking about the positives of actually using a unified system, and then we kind of got off of that.
I blame you.
That's okay. But one thing you mentioned about pulpiness and critical failures, they definitely fit certain play styles, whereas they won't fit other ones or play experiences that you're going for. And I think that's where using multiple systems, using a system tailored towards the experience you want to have is a good idea. And being open to trying different systems, I think, allows for a lot more game experiences and a lot more different things happening at the table.
Well, and not only that, but particularly if you're a designer, I think having experience with as many different game systems as possible, even ones you don't really like, is a good way to go about it, because you really need to know that what you're doing isn't something that's already being duplicated by like 12 other game systems already,
Yeah.
or maybe you've got this great idea for a mechanic and another game already does it, but they do it in a way that's just slightly different. You go, that I like the way they do that better, but what if I took it into like this direction?
Mhm.
You're not going to know those things if all you do is just keep playing the same gaming system.
I mean, from a designer standpoint, you shouldn't stick to one thing anyway, just because, I mean, how many writers stick to reading one genre? How many, movie producers stick to watching one kind of movie? I mean, that would be absolutely silly. That's one of the
Well,
things they'll tell you not to do.
even when you learn a language, your best way to do that is to study a second one.
Yeah. So, I mean, sticking to one, I guess if you're just going to be playing it is probably not as big a deal, but if you are a designer and creating things, you should be branching out definitely. I mean, that's just basics.
But there's a lot of people out there that all they've ever played is their house rules that started out as an AD&D campaign 15 years ago, and they've played this one game for 15 years, not knowing that 12 other games have done the same thing. Like
Yeah.
it's like D&D but without classes.
And it is weird
Yeah.
how that happens, but
But there's nothing wrong with that table where they're doing that if they're having fun.
hmm
The problem is if they decide, oh, well, let's do a sword and sorcery game, or let's do a low magic game, or whatever it is, or let's do a modern game, and they want to use the same rules. It's still going to be D&D, just with guns
Right.
well, yeah, maybe.
and cars.
But at the same time, is
Well,
that
no, D&D with
necessarily a
guns and
bad
cars
thing?
is Shadowrun.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you're looking at D&D, it's a game that it doesn't have any real specific rules tailoring it to being strictly fantasy, and there's no like special dice that are strictly for that. It's not like the One Ring or anything like that that has special mechanics and very special dice and very special little tools to tailor it specifically to the game. I mean, you can use those for anything you want, and it doesn't really matter.
Well, D&D is a pretty general system, and it's fairly flexible, but it's still going to have a certain feel to it. It's still going to have a
But
certain...
it's just a D&D feel. It's not really.
Yeah. But
not
I'm
really
not saying it's bad, but it's going to have that feel.
Mm-hmm. But is that, well, I mean, that's not bad then.
Would you use it for superheroes?
Yeah, I'd probably try. You might have to actually modify it and all, but,
Well,
So-
yeah, but that's how you end up getting a game like Mutants and Masterminds.
I mean,
Yeah,
Rift isn't too far off from D&D when you actually get down to the bare mechanics. Really, I mean, it's mostly rolling d20s and stuff.
Yeah,
So-
mostly.
That's basically supers.
I guess you could make the argument for champions being a D20 version of superheroes.
Yeah.
I would like to see you make that argument.
Wasn't Champions the Palladium superhero game?
No.
Champions. No, that's the hero system.
Oh God, no! That I'm confusing them. Well, what was the
Palladium had a
The
super,
Palladium superhero game is Heroes Unlimited.
Heroes Unlimited?
Oh.
Sorry, yes.
There you go.
Yeah,
Heroes Unlimited.
Champions is by no stretch of the imagination a D20 fair.
No. Sorry, I was getting them confused. This is what happens when you have too many games going on at once. You can't keep the names straight, and somebody always gets mad when you get the names wrong.
Nothing quite as bad as calling out the wrong name at the wrong moment.
Exactly. The drawback of polygamery.
Okay.
I've played both Heroes Unlimited and Champions, which is part of the problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
that's definitely part of the problem.
we've been talking about monogaming mostly, so should we move to polygamery and what benefits?
Well, I think it's more the answer to the limitations of the monogaming, right? But the drawbacks certainly are that you have to learn a new system, so there's a curve.
You have to buy more books.
And if you have someone in your
buy
group
more
who won't read the rules, that can start to be a drawback.
Yeah, like we would ever have that.
All right, well, she's not here, so I don't think you should talk shit about her.
Why? I talk shit about her when she's here at the podcast.
Yeah, but that's better. Anyways, yeah, okay, so that's part of it. People who don't want to read new rules, and just the process of learning the rules slows down because you're changing genres, you're changing your table experience, and you're slowing that down and adding complications by adding a whole new rule set. Plus, it affects your GM confidence when you've never run a system or have never played a system. It's a little bit harder to just go.
So what do you think, Josh? What do you think are drawbacks to polygame?
I mean, the aforementioned having to learn new rules, and
Josh doesn't want to buy any new books. I think he's made it very clear he doesn't want to buy any new books.
That's part of it. Especially, a lot of games these days are pretty darn expensive. You're looking at even $20 PDFs. I mean, that can add up pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
But then there's also the case where a lot of these books tend to have, 200 pages of rules that you have to read through. And a lot of them aren't even all that well, organized. Especially with the advent of Kickstarter, which, while I do love it, it does kind of lower the quality of the average book that's
so did
published,
the
I'd say.
D20 glut. So
Yeah, that did too, but...
Yeah.
I mean, I think we were almost starting to get over that a little bit, just a little bit. And then just kind of like rammed it through the roof.
Yeah, fair enough. But some awesome stuff comes out of Kickstarter as well.
But there are tons and tons of things to go through, and it can be a bit difficult.
Yeah. But I don't know, because I get a new system. Do you guys always think that the system, like when you're reading the system, do you think that you're going to play it the way you're reading it, or do you think, what could I use this for? Because I know when I read Numenera, I was like, this would be awesome for sword and sorcery.
I think I do that because I mean, I think it's something that we've talked about before is that I'm not really one for published settings.
Oh yeah, we have mentioned that.
So
but you do publish settings.
Yes, and that's not hypocritical in the least. So, I'm sorry that I like to make up my own settings. Sue me.
You like to make up your own settings, and you think they're so awesome. Someone else should play them, but not you.
No, I play my own settings. So
I think we had the same discussion on here before.
Yes,
Yeah, we have. We've teased you before with this. I think we can move forward. We should move forward.
But I was gonna. Anyway, the actual point that I was going to make when I brought that up was the fact that you know, that is how I tend to look at games when I see them. It's not a, you know, how can I play this game? How can I take this system and apply it to something that's interesting to me?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
I mean, although from what I've read of Numenera, I would think it would be interesting to give it a try, because you know it's a fairly old school kind of approach where you know you do kind of make up a lot of the setting as you go, only because so much of the past of the world just is unknown.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, it's a great system.
You know?
And I think it could be used for a few different things, not just what is right out of the box. But I think that was the whole premise behind their other one called The Strange,
Right.
is that you would be using the same thing for multiple stuff.
Well, and if you have a house system that's, you know, fairly universal in its application, there's nothing wrong with taking it and applying it to other genres or settings.
Oh, absolutely. And when you find that, like when you're, you know, going through your system and doing different things with it, and you realize, hey, this would work great for this too, I don't see any problem with applying it to different genres if that table experience works with those genres in the same way. If you're going to interact with the setting in the same way, then the mechanics being the same are fine. The only thing is, different fictions create different expectations. Different genres have different expectations in them. So if you are going to interact with those worlds and those, I don't know what you'd call them, storylines, in the same way characters in those genres would, you're going to need a mechanic that facilitates that.
Sort of like how you wouldn't want to use D20 or anything really like that for, say, a heavy investigation game.
Yes.
I think that's probably one of the best.
Although, isn't Call of Cthulhu D20?
There was a
I think
version
they had
of
a
it that was
variant.
D20.
I don't think anyone played that
Yeah.
one, did they?
Now, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because I think in at least in third edition that there were skills that
Really?
could be used to support an investigation.
Well, I mean, there were skills for everything under the sun.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, but yeah.
And skills were just, you write down the name and you give it, you know, a chance or something, and that's it. So, that really wasn't that hard.
But so if you had to stick to one system, what do you think it would be?
That's a crazy question.
Yeah.
That's
what gamers do, is they ask dumbass questions of each other and see who can come up with the most over the top answer. So
the answer obviously is riffs.
No, it's not. It took us 3 sessions to break riffs.
Exactly, and that's what makes it awesome.
Really, we broke it in 2. Let's face it. Just spent 1 session going, wow, we really broke this. Oh, man. If I was stuck, if I had to, I'd probably just go with my own design.
That's a cop-out.
No, it's not a cop-out. It's what I'm working on, and I'm creating something that fits the experience I want at a table. And if I had to use one system, I'd use it.
I think since Stacy's not here, I'm going to go with Precious Dark. I've never actually read the game or played it or anything like that.
I've played it.
Huh?
I've played it.
Well, good for you.
Yeah. And it probably would work for several things.
But you know, much like knowing that she never will read the rules to the games we're playing, I'm just going to go with the fact that she isn't going to listen to this.
No, she's not.
To hear me say, you know, at like the 20-minute mark, that I would only ever play Precious Dark.
Yeah, I don't know what that's published that I could use for everything.
Well, the thing is, though, if you only had one game, would you necessarily want to do everything?
Yeah, I guess. I could probably get by with Swords and Wizardry.
I mean, if all you want to do is just play, you know, fantasy games for the rest of your life,
yeah.
You know, do you really need a lot of game systems to do that? No. I mean, You can do it with one. You could do it with two or three.
Yeah.
Obviously, the correct answer is Dungeon World for the one fantasy game you would want to be stuck with. But
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I'd be tossed up between Swords and Wizardry and Lamentations.
I think
Mhm.
and I think you'd have to give Rift some love for that too, because it really would make a great fantasy game.
Yeah.
Don't you think, Josh?
No, definitely. No, they have Palladium for like everything, so
Yeah.
yeah.
It's true. There's a Palladium version of everything, from ninjas and super spies to
They're all awesome.
Heroes Unlimited,
Robotech.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Robotech. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can do anything.
There's like Nightbane and the zombie one. And,
Oh yeah, Beyond the Supernatural.
yeah.
There you go.
All right.
So Palladium.
Well,
there you go.
yeah,
Ultimate
yeah.
polygamist.
Yeah, we've fixed it. Okay.
Yeah.
Bam. Another question answered. Right here on the Geeky Voices Carry podcast.
Mhm.
Palladium games for everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I hear hundreds of gamers crying out in anger and frustration at that answer.
Hundreds? You think that's that many are listening?
Well, I think that's all that would actually care.
Oh, okay.
Well,
You know, Palladium was the only thing that they had to play with. So
they just
I can make it
can't
work.
be awesome.
I although I'm
I like Palladium Fantasy.
I've said it off
Good.
camera, and I will say it during this podcast. One of the goals of my Gen Con experience will be to get a selfie with Kevin Symbieta.
Oh, sweet.
So
Just need to get a wearing a Polygamory t-shirt.
maybe Grumpy Cat too.
And Grumpy Cat. Fantastic.
Cat, yeah.
That's a must.
I don't know. Can you have Grumpy Cat and Kevin Symbieta in the same room? I mean, do you ever see them together on the internet? No.
I don't know. Might be like
That would
Pokeroo.
be too much. The room would implode.
Did you say Pokeroo?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that
That's Canadian.
thing?
This is a Canadian thing. All right. I'm going to explain Pokeroo as fast as I can. There was this ridiculous children's television program called The Polka Dot Door, in which there was two people. One was male, one was female, and they were different actors that went through. They cycled through at different times. The male actor would leave at some point during the show and disappear, and then the Pokeroo, this bizarre, like a giant purple furry, would return, and all he would say is Pokeroo over and over again in different inflections to communicate.
So it's a cross between Barney and Groot.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, basically, he's a cross between Barney and Groot. That's a really good. Anyway, so then the Pokeroo would leave, and the guy would come back, and he'd be like, "Oh, I missed him again." That's
He was
The
actually the person in the Pokeroo suit.
he was the person in the Pokeroo suit, but he just always happened to miss him.
You know, with a name like
That's-
Pokeroo, I was really expecting your explanation to be more porny.
You know, if they broadcast in French, that one probably would have been. Everything was better on the French station.
Okay, so on a semi-related subject, I believe, David, you had a prepared topic.
Oh yes. I was curious what you guys thought about unified mechanic systems versus, I don't know, ununified mechanic systems. So like,
Mechanic systems.
So explain
Yeah,
the unified mechanic system for people who don't know it.
right, that's what I was just about to do. So unified mechanic is like GURPS, where you roll 3d6 all the time for everything, or Fate, where you're rolling your 4 Fate dice all the time, or Vampire, where you're just rolling a handful of d10s, or d6 system, or whatever.
Savage Worlds where you're. Oh wait, they don't. Never mind.
Yeah, no. Savage Worlds is kind of an in-between, isn't it? Isn't there the same target number all the time, but you roll different dice?
Josh, you're the expert.
It
Or am
depends.
I think I'm
Yeah.
confusing it with
You
window.
have a target number of 4 whenever you're trying to like make a skill work or something like that. But if you're like trying to apply damage, then you have to go against their toughness. So that's
Right.
window.
Okay, so, and then there's like D&D and all its variants, and you've got a D20, and you roll it high for some things, you roll it low for other things. Sometimes you roll against a stat, sometimes you roll against a target number with a bonus, sometimes you're rolling 2d6, sometimes you're rolling, you know, something else. I don't know. You're rolling like a whole bunch of different ways, a whole bunch of different kinds of things. Sometimes you're rolling 2d6 low, sometimes you're rolling 2d6 high. Like it's not the same mechanic to get everything. Whereas if you're playing Talislanta, you take a d20 and you roll it, and it's always the same.
Well, yeah, that's also, I think, where the third edition got a lot of its more unified mechanics from, was basically they stole it from Talislanta when
I would agree with that.
when Wizards of the Coast was publishing them.
Yes.
That and
Yes.
Jonathan Tweed has said that Talislanta is one of his favorite games. So.
Good choice.
Talislanta is awesome.
So which one of these do you think would be better for a if you're taking a polygamist approach? Would you prefer games with unified mechanics because there's less to learn, or just jump in and go for all the moving parts you can?
I think that depends, right? Like when you're teaching somebody a game with a unified mechanic, is it easier to teach them? Because I don't know. I've always started people on D&D. I don't think I've ever started with a unified mechanic game, which strikes me as crazy at the moment.
I don't think it's so much the unified mechanic as just the mechanics in general. Because, D20, it's, roll D20. And then I'll tell you if you need to roll something else. Whereas a lot of other games, even if they have a unified mechanic, there may be an umpteen amount of situations where they have to roll that, and they have to kind of like sit there and learn all of these different little nuances with where they have to roll.
So you're saying there's other moving parts anyway?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter?
It's probably more about the amount of moving parts than the moving parts.
I think the amount of moving parts and the target per audience. I think if you have someone like in our group with Ethel, because she had never played a role-playing game before encountering us, and even though we started out with Swords and Wizardry, which is fairly light as games go, it still does have quite a few moving parts. There's a lot of things to know. I mean, particularly since she decided to play a spellcaster as her first ever character class.
And it turns out she doesn't like spellcasters.
Well, yeah, but that was mostly just because there were a lot of things for her to remember about her character.
That, and let's face it, the OSR kind of spellcasters aren't that interesting at the early levels.
Really? Okay, well, we're not going to have this argument.
No, but they're not. Not coming from a video game kind of background, let's put it that way.
Okay. Anyways.
David wants to urinate upon the OSR because he thinks it's filthy. And
That's not... No, I think spellcasters are great.
He likes his one spell a day, damn it.
You know what? It doesn't.
And his
it doesn't
little tiny blunt dagger that he's useless with.
It wasn't really much different than my stupid Warhammer. Anyways, we're not gonna
1 HP for that because you know what? Man mode it.
Yeah. He's baiting you, David. Are you
right. A lot of moving parts. So whether it's the dice or the other stuff. So like say Fate. Is it difference between aspects and stunts and how that's applied? Does that make the system just as hard to learn as, say, something like D&D, where you just say, no, roll this instead?
Well,
roll low, roll high.
I mean, from a mechanical angle, Fate really isn't all that different. You're still rolling dice, you're still hitting target numbers. They do a lot of things mechanically. They tend to do them in a lot of kind of traditional ways. But the thing is, it's the stuff that you're doing that tends to be different, because rather than going, I picked the lock, and that's it. That's what you do in D&D. You pick your one action, you do it, and if you fail, you stand there at the door for like 40 minutes until a wandering monster comes by, or you open the door up. Whereas opposed to Fate, it's more of a
I invoke my master thief aspect, and
well, it's more of a I get through the doorway. I look at what you tend to look at it from a scene, rather than just as an individual action.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, I think that kind of approach can make a difference when you're moving from one system to another. If you're what you're looking at is the actions of your character as opposed to how the story unfolds, that can take a leap of logic.
all right. Well, okay, say versus GURPS then, where you're rolling your, I don't know, security skill to get through the door.
And failing because
your IQ isn't high enough. And it's GURPS. But say you've got a second level thief, he's failing too to pick that lock, so who cares?
Yeah.
It's not much different between those two. How is that experience different between a unified mechanic and a not unified mechanic? Where all of a sudden you're rolling frickin' percentile in D&D.
Yeah, I don't think it really matters. It's the action itself and the approach of, are you somebody that doesn't know what the hell you're doing, as opposed to,
Okay, but with
you're a competent individual who doing something like picking a lock is a walk in the park.
Yeah, all right. But as a player, is knowing what you have to do next going to make a difference to your game experience? The fact that you don't have to ask somebody how it works, is that going to change how you play your character?
I'm not really sure I'm following what you're asking.
Okay, so say you have a unified mechanic. Somebody's explained the rules. Okay, I'm going to take these dice, I'm going to roll, I'm going to add my skill, and I'm going to hit this target number. And it's always, the same. It's always the same thing. Oh, the GM said it was a this target number. Okay, I look at my page. Okay, well, yeah, if I roll okay, I'm going to make it. Or, I have to roll really well to make it. I'm not going to try that. I'm going to try something different. Versus someone who's like, I don't even know what I'm rolling. I don't know where the answer to that is on my character sheet. I'm not even sure I can do that. So it's like, well, can I pick the lock? I'm a monk. Can I pick the lock? Whatever it is. And then is that making for a different experience where there's all these different things to learn? Does that slow down grasping the game? Does that slow down enjoying the game?
Honestly, I think it's going to depend on the person playing. Just as an example, like I ran DCC RPG for my friends in real life. They've never played really tabletop games at all, so they're fresh to it.
You have friends in real life?
Yeah, I do. It's amazing. And DCC, of course, is fairly similar along with a lot of the like OSR D&D type games, of course. So it's not unified mechanics or anything like that.
Okay.
But they were able to just jump into it and just start trying to do things because, well, they just asked if can I just do it? And you're like, yeah, okay, and just try it because, there really isn't anything holding back in most games, I don't think, unless it's like something extraordinarily complicated. But I think that you really only find in either heavy magic settings or heavy technology settings. So
okay. So, do you guys think that there's any advantage to using one over the other?
I don't think so. I think it still just comes down to the rules themselves and how many of them there are. So like we
How
take
well they're presented.
Savage Worlds for example. I mean there aren't that many dice that are different for it, but you have to go through things like you had a target number of 4, or you have to get over that. If you get over it by so much, then other things happen, and that leads into the next roll that you have to do, which is set to a different stat that you then have to roll a different die to.
That's so
And
freaking
certain
annoying.
modifiers applied to that. And then if you roll it a certain way, then other things happen because of that. And that's kind of where it becomes more complicated and where it becomes harder, I think.
Well, Fate can be that same way too, because
Yeah,
you
maybe it could be.
win with style, you have fail with style. Um, the relative degree of success can make a big difference.
I
But
think that's far more kind of, wavy, hand wavy though.
yeah,
Really.
well, I
Yeah.
mean, but it's also tied to a single mechanic where it's like you roll, and then as you're comparing the two, you look at your degree of success, and you're not there aren't quite as many moving parts.
So you could say that the unified mechanic is better in a more complex situation. How about that?
Okay. But certainly, non-unified mechanics give you a lot more options to fit different situations. Like as a GM, what I like about the D&D type system is that it's, well, okay, yeah, we're in this situation. Oh, that's kind of like a reaction. I can use the reaction adjustment for that. Or, I want your skills or your abilities to affect this, but not in a big way. So I'm going to use the reaction adjustment with your stat bonus. Or, this is a pure stat thing. Just roll under it. Given the different situation, you've got lots of ways of dealing with it. But I think with a unified mechanic, you're basically just hand waving the difficulty or the target number. You're going, oh well, yeah, there's that, but I'm going to apply this, or I'm just going to lower it because of these factors, or whatever it is. So it's
But
kind of comes down to the same thing.
But if those things are there in the rules, I don't think you're really. I think you're using hand wavy in a overly dismissive sort of manner.
Well, isn't everything a GM does kind of hand wavy?
Only if you've got a dick GM. I would never hand wave anything in our games ever.
I think that if you hand wave consistently, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, if you're hand waving consistently, can you tell that they're not hand waving at all?
Yeah, I never even roll dice, so
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, I do. I just have like a couple of D8s that I roll to make the sound on the table.
Yeah, and then another friggin' giant toad attacks us.
Yep.
And I'm in D8s or D30s because, why stop at D8?
Well, because a D30 makes a heavier sound, so
we would catch on.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so let's move on to our something cool segment of the night.
Okay.
And we will start with Josh because he never prepares, so I know he's just going to look at one of his monitors and pull something out of there.
Sure. Okay, well, let's see. Almost Royal is on BBC right now, so that's a good starter. That's a new show on BBC America, and it's pretty hilarious if you haven't seen it.
What then?
Almost Royal.
Almost Royal.
Yeah, you haven't heard of it? Basically, it's these two actors who are portraying minor British royals, and they're going through America.
Remember from Monty Python the upper class twit award sketch?
Yes.
They're basically playing characters just like that.
Yeah, it's basically a half-hour version of that.
Except they're with Americans who don't actually know any better.
Yeah.
And so it's you can imagine the situations. It's pretty
Yeah, we have television programs, like segments of there's a television program that had a segment called Talking to Americans, where we would, I say we, but they would go down and they would just ask Americans stupid questions, posing as like Canadian news teams, and of course when you have the news guy asks you a question, you think it's legit, but it's things that are totally absurd, like Canada is considering it's not using the metric 20-hour clock and going to the 24-hour clock that the Americans are using. What do you think about this? And then people will be like, wow, they should use the 24-hour clock. Or they were going to strip mine the back of Mount Rushmore, like a Canadian mining company was going to come down, and people were getting really angry. And, it's just...
See, if they understood that a metric day actually had 23 hours, they wouldn't.
Yeah. And I think the worst one they did is they were going around telling senators that Prime Minister Jean Poutine had endorsed their candidacy.
Yes, but
and they were taking this as like the gospel, and they're saying, well, that's because he knows what a great job we're doing down here, and it's. And
yes, but how many American politicians have appeared on the Colbert Report thinking it was an actual political program?
Yeah, well, not so many anymore. But
no, they still get them, which is I find to be amazing that there hasn't been some sort of memo in big bold letters, like Arial Black or something. Hey,
you would think.
Colbert Report, it's comedy, apparently.
Anyway, so this Almost Royals thing doesn't really surprise me. It's the same kind of douchebaggery that this hour has 22 minutes engaged in as well. Because it's basically douchebaggery, though.
You say that, but the Boston episode, they actually took part in a Tea Party meeting.
Oh, and God, they did not.
Yes, they did. Oh, that was... Wow. That was pretty amazing. You should watch that.
All right, well, we'll see. I don't even know if we get it up here.
It's on
BBC
watch part America.
Of it on YouTube also.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right, David, now that your mind is blown.
Now that my mind is blown by Almost Royals, I found something cool that's a little bit odd. It's a Kickstarter called Caged Dice. It's this machinist who was looking at there's a machinist exercise called making a Turner cube, which basically creates a cube inside another cube out of a cube. And if an apprentice can figure out how to do it, he's allowed to try it out on his lunch break and make himself one of these Turner cubes. Anyway, this one guy was looking at it and he goes, this looks just like a dice. So what he's doing is making these caged dice that are basically a dice inside of a cage that's originally made out of one block. And he's making them out of all sorts of things. So you can get like titanium, you can get tungsten, aluminum, stainless steel, or you can pay like $2,000 and have dice made out of like meteor stone. So like, all I could think of is the Avatar: The Last Airbender episode where he makes a sword out of a meteorite. It's on that level of insanity. It's cartoonishly crazy, but you can get some really cool, unique dice to use at your table, and if you're using a die 6 mechanic, this might not be a bad way to go.
That looks really weird.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I was kind of.
Josh has got it up on one of his monitors right now.
I was kind of hoping the dice in the middle would be like fixed inside of it, but no.
No, it rattles around inside the cage. That's what's neat about it. Yeah.
It's like a Smashing Pumpkins song almost.
Yeah, it is.
There you
It
go.
looks like it would just tear up tables, though.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, they rounded the edges on some of them, but yes, I expect it would probably tear up the odd table.
Yeah,
but
I've got a set of pewter dice that they're like a historical recreation of how they used to like make dice in old-timey times.
Really?
And, yeah, and
They didn't just chop up wooden cubes and put dots on them?
No, because a lot of the colonial like soldiers and things were metal workers, so they would just cast them out of pewter because pewter was really easy to work with, and
No, that makes sense.
you make a mold and then you can just recast as many of the damn things as you want. So
That's a good point.
but they're really not table friendly. They would tear the crap out of a tabletop. Now for my something cool, I'm going to continue my theme, I guess, for the last few days. I late last week I received my copy of the annotated edition of Sorcerer and the combined edition of the Sorcerer supplements by Ron Edwards, and sort of one of um, the early volleys in indie slash story gaming.
It's cool. I love the idea behind Sorcerer. The idea that you have to let something in you in order to cast magic, something bad, you know, in order to gain the power. So like you're plucking out one of your eyes and sticking a demon in there so that you can
Well,
see better or whatever it is.
and it's interesting that he came up with this game because it was a lot of what people would consider old school games that led him to the creation of this. I mean, the biggest influences on it were the Fantasy Trip,
Okay.
because
And
that was like
Tecna.
the Fantasy Trip, RuneQuest.
Hmm.
You can see a lot of RuneQuest in some of the stuff, and strangely, the original Cyberpunk game.
Huh.
He mentions in I think it's in the annotations, not in the actual text itself, but he mentions that one of the earliest drafts of Sorcerer was actually written for Interlock, the system that runs Cyberpunk.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I really wish I'd picked up the Kickstarter, but I don't know, I didn't have the cash at the time, or I was distracted by life. I don't know.
I mean, it's really interesting to see how a lot of this stuff started. I mean, because you can see the sorcerer DNA in a lot of games. I mean, even Fate. It's a lot of the same sort of, because the idea of sorcerer is that your character's a protagonist. You're supposed to be jumping in there and doing stuff and making hard choices, and it's cool because, I mean, yeah, he does kind of knock some other RPGs, but at the same time, I mean, he doesn't come out and say things like D&D's crap. At least not in the book. I'm sure he had someplace on the internet he might have said that, but
I think that's probably likely.
but what he would say is the approach of these games is, well, crap. And the idea being that you really shouldn't be, you shouldn't take a cliched approach to your character. You should be invested in your character. You should be willing to do things. You should come to the table going, hell yeah, I'm ready to do this. And you know what? I don't care if you're ready for me. I'm going to do it anyway, and then the rest of you catch up. Yeah. And it's interesting also because it deals a lot with, rather than it, because Sorcerer doesn't actually have a plot to it. There's no meta plot. There's no overarching setting. There's no any of that. The idea is that the story emerges as you play.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
So, yeah.
That sounds pretty old school.
Yeah.
So,
but it is. It's I think I'm about a quarter of the way, because there's a lot to read, and there's the annotations, and so. But it's been a really good read. I've really found it interesting and engaging. So.
Man, it's too bad I'm not on a popular podcast and I could convince Ron Edwards to send me one.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to buy one. Where do you buy one right now?
I believe you can. Well, you can buy it direct from his website.
Can you? Because his website's a bit of a shit show.
Well.
Because I looked for it and I couldn't find it.
I don't know how to help you. Have you tried places like the usual suspects, like Troll and Toad or Troll and Toad?
I checked RPG
I hate
now.
Have you tried crap? What's the anyway? It'll come to me afterwards.
Yeah,
You know,
you
the
can tell
other
me
big,
later.
yeah,
Yeah.
the other big gaming store site. I'm
Noble
sure
Knight?
there's some. Huh?
Noble Knight?
Yes, thank you. Noble Knight. Have you tried Noble Knight?
Oh, no, I haven't. I've never bought anything from that.
That's usually your best bet, because
Mhm.
if they don't have it, it's because it's out of print and they just sold their last copy right before you went to buy it.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about PDF? Do they have it in PDF?
Yes.
Okay, because that make more sense for me.
Yeah, being a Canadian and imports and tariffs and VATs and all that.
Hello, free trade.
Yeah.
It's just the shipping that's killer.
Yeah.
Because you guys, I don't know, apparently the rest of the world doesn't exist for your postal service.
It's just as much of a pain in the ass to ship things in our country, believe me.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's cheaper usually, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's dirt cheap within your country to ship stuff around, but
Well,
the
sure,
minute
if
you send it
sure,
here,
if you send it media rate and then it never arrives and you've got no way to track it and you can't tell if anyone even actually sent the damn packages they claim they sent you 3 weeks ago.
we don't even have a media rate.
Well, originally media rate was one of these things where the idea was it was for like periodicals and publishers would use it.
Yeah, no, it
So
makes sense.
you had to have like special permits and but it wasn't available to just anybody. So now it is, and it's just like it's basically this is the I don't care if it gets there service.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
and on that note, we should probably wrap up for another episode of Geeky Voices Carry.
Probably.
Hopefully next time, Stacy will be able to visit us and talk a little bit, that sort of thing. So,
Mhm.
so for 2 more weeks, and hopefully I'll remember in advance next time, and we'll be able to better prepare for our next episode. But
We won't have to use my topics.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's a bad night when we're using David's topics.
2 of them. Usually it goes
Oh, wow.
before the podcast. It's like no.
No.
Oh my God, Dave, no.
Mm.
What are you talking about?
Well, and the reason for that is one word: Vietnam. So after that, you pretty much lost your rights to.
All right.
So
Yeah, fair enough.
Pretty much.
I don't even think I picked that topic.
no, you just for some reason dragged the topic that had nothing to do with it. I think into talking about how dungeons were Vietnam or something like that. So.
Mm.
All right. Well, we're not going to rehash that. I'm sure everybody's heard that episode because it was awesome, and
Yeah, we should end this.
maybe I should expand on that.
All right. Say goodnight, everyone.
Night, everyone.
Good night.